It's my pleasure to introduce Deryck Jones, who also happens to be my former business partner. He's a distinguished technology and marketing expert with over 5 decades of experience. In his 20s, Deryck developed groundbreaking software for the heavy construction industry, contributing to projects such as the Fresno Dam, Yorba Linda, and John Wayne Airport. He led an international team to create the world's first autonomous robotic control system and served as vice president of research and development for Thermoelectric, a MIT spinout. As global CTO and senior vice president of technology for an international PR firm, Deryck collaborated with industry giants such as Microsoft, Apple, and Dell Technologies across 55 countries. In 2002, he was recognized by Computer World as a Premier 100 IT leader in North America. Currently, Deryck is founder of iGloo Digital Marketing, offering innovative marketing solutions and fractional CTO services. His extensive expertise encompasses cybersecurity, networking, digital communications on platforms such as GoHighLevel, Salesforce, and LinkedIn. Deryck's entrepreneurial journey includes building over a dozen successful companies, many achieving 6 or 7-figure revenues. Deryck's also a disabled American veteran who has faced many health challenges over his entrepreneurial career. Please join me in welcoming Deryck to our Entrepreneurial Summit. Hey, Deryck.
Hey, Lois, how are you?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Excellent.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing okay.
Good.
Ready for the 2025 journey.
Good.
Whatever
Good.
that's going to bring, right?
Off to an exciting year.
Absolutely.
Deryck, you've built and scaled multiple businesses across different industries. How's your resilience played into that role in your entrepreneurial journey? And what advice would you give to entrepreneurs as they adapt their businesses to support their own health challenges?
I think the most important and very simple one-word guidance, and that is actually it's 3 words, don't give up. Over the years, I think I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs get into this and other spaces, and the one common denominator, the ones that fail, they simply give up too soon. A lot of times success doesn't necessarily follow your timeline, but if you stick at it and you just keep working at it, eventually you'll figure it out and you'll break through, but you just can't give up.
Yeah, I think that's a good reminder. We've both kind of been at this for a long time and seen our ups and downs and all arounds.
Yeah, these past 10 years for me have been particularly challenging because I've been through, in fact, I thought I was going to retire in 2012. I had an offer for the company I had at the time, which was a $4.5 million company, 23 employees. I had an offer at $11.2 million to buy me out, and it all went up in smoke. And the end result is I lost the company, and I lost about $1.5 million personally. Immediately, I started a second company right after it. I managed to get some of the existing IP and move it over. That worked really well for about 2 years, and then something that I had done got in my way, which basically I was doing development work for Salesforce, doing development integration and so on. And I had become friends with the enterprise, one of their top enterprise salespeople, and I made a deal with them under the table to feed me leads. So I ended up with leads like Canon and Sony Music and so on. And then one day, the senior VP of sales at Salesforce apparently got really upset because he wanted those leads to go to his top companies like Deloitte and Accenture and so on. And so unfortunately, Bob got fired, and I got notice from Salesforce that my brand, which was Dataforce, was in somehow conflict with Salesforce. And I really knew it was a shot across the bow telling me that they weren't real happy with that arrangement. So that went down the tubes. And then a number of personal things have happened, and it's been a hell of a ride. But I'm finally now getting to a point where things I'm doing are beginning to really work. And it's just, I think, a reinforcement of the fact that you simply can't give up. And one of the most critical things is your mindset, because if your mindset's off, you're never going to make it. So for me, for anybody out there that's working as an entrepreneur, you really have to concentrate on your mindset.
And what have you done over the years to work on your mindset as you've been going through the peaks and valleys to help get that to a more positive, more engaging place so that you're ready to dig in and be resilient and do the work?
I think one of the first things I learned, and I learned it fairly young, I don't know everything, not even close. And there's a lot of things that I don't know that I don't know. And so you've got to be really open to taking advice, and you've got to be really open to looking at other alternatives other than what you might be doing if they're not working. In fact, in this particular go around, I actually got together with a coach because I realized that I was getting to a pretty dark place and I needed to get out of it, and I couldn't get out of it myself. And so you got to be willing to step beyond yourself, and when you need it, ask for help and be willing to accept it.
Very true. I've done coach training myself, and I've worked with coaches over the years that have gotten me over certain sticking points and helped me move on.
I've coached probably close to 1,000 people over the years. And if I'm going to coach somebody and expect them to accept my coaching, then where is it that I shouldn't accept somebody else's coaching? Coaching works if you get the right formula and the right person.
Let's talk a little bit about kind of systems and energy, because many entrepreneurs in our audience deal with fluctuating energy levels. So looking at digital tools and systems, what would you recommend that would help them run their business effectively while managing their energy? And I know that covers a wide category, but what are some of the basics that you think would be really helpful to entrepreneurs?
There's two predominant tools that I use every single day. One is GoHighLevel. And GoHighLevel it's a tool that for a lot of people, it will appear to be very overwhelming. It's not perfect. There's a number of things about it that you have to learn to adapt to, but it's very cost effective for what it provides, and it's very effective in terms of providing all the basic functionality that one would need to run a marketing automation or marketing agency, if you will, and which is one of the reasons why it's just gone through absolutely exponential growth. The other tool is I use AI a lot. I use not just ChatGPT. It depends on what it is that I'm trying to do. Not all LLMs are the same, and there are circumstances where one is more suited than another. But you have to be willing to get in there and give it a whirl. And if nothing else, get in on ChatGPT and learn how to write a good prompt and then leverage it, because it can do things so much faster than what you're able to do. And I know for myself, I'm 68 now, and my memory isn't near what it used to be. I have to make sure everything gets on my calendar, because if it doesn't, I could forget it easily. And I'm really rigorous about what I put on my calendar so I don't forget things. And then I regularly use ChatGPT to help speed up how I'm able to work, because it just is so fast. And then there's a number of other small tools, like I'm often doing videos, so I use Descript to edit my videos, and Camtasia, and of course Canva if I'm doing graphics work, and sometimes I'll use Magellan or something like that if I'm trying to do some type of AI image. You need to find a core tool set for yourself that's going to essentially accomplish the tasks that you need to do each and every day in your business. Now, I know for myself, every single day, it's a conscious decision to feel the way I feel. In other words, if I don't consciously think about it, then I'll get overwhelmed, because I've been dealing with acute pain for 40 years, and I'm on all kinds of medication for it. Most of the time, it doesn't really work, but I take it anyway, because it's even worse when I don't. And of course, with all of that comes exhaustion, which is you feel every single day. And if you allow yourself to just say, woe is me, then you're just going to fold and give up. And I'm just of the mindset that I just don't give up. I don't stop, I don't quit, I don't give up. And that's a conscious decision. And that's one that you have to make each and every day when you get up. If you got a headache, you're not feeling really well, you're feeling pain in your knees or your back or wherever it is, we create with words, and you've got to simply create the circumstances in your own mind that it's not going to stop you and it's not going to get in your way, and you're just going to go ahead and forge forward.
And I know we share some commonalities in the sense that we both kind of deal with chronic pain, different sources and such, but it is so important. And I even find that when I approach it with the mindset of, I just have work to do today and I want to get on with it and accomplish something, it helps me like ignore the pain as much as possible. So you're not focusing on it. Because I think when you focus on the pain, it gets more intense.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's why I think work can really support you as long as you are paying attention to your body in the same time and just not letting yourself get overstressed about it at all.
Yeah, another thing that I tend to do is, for me, it would be really simple to sit here at I typically work 7 days a week anyway, but it would be really simple for me to simply sit at my desk and never move, but just keep working. But I know that if I do that, the pain's going to be a lot worse. I'm going to get really stiff. There's a whole laundry list of stuff that happens if I do that. So I try to make sure that every hour I get up, move around, do a little bit of stretching, that kind of thing, just to keep myself going. And then I'm also constantly drinking water. I don't drink coffee anymore. I don't drink, in fact, about the only thing I ever drink anymore is water. And for me, water's always been a challenge because I'm like a dried sponge because of all the medicine I've taken. If you can picture the analogy, if you take a dry sponge and you put water on it, it just rolls off, right? It doesn't get absorbed by the sponge. So it takes a lot of effort for that sponge to eventually be able to absorb and keep the water. And that's like me. A lot of times I feel like the water just comes in and goes right out. But you got to do it because if you don't, you just get worse. And, it's all about mindset. It's all about not letting yourself become overwhelmed by it and making a conscious decision about what you're going to do next, right?
I think recognizing stress, if it starts to enter into your presence or you start to feel overwhelmed, to think about it, address it before it escalates, because we certainly know that contributes to how we feel and also contributes if you deal with pain levels too.
Yeah. Yeah, another way you can also think about pain is to think about pain not as a punishment, but as a teacher. Because pain is your body notifying you of circumstances within your own body. And so if you listen to it, you start to get a sense of what you need to do to address it. And you just can't let it go by. You have to deal with it and deal with it at the time so that you're not overwhelmed by it.
And I think it points to the fact, too, our audience is probably here with a variety of different conditions, some of which we can help ourselves feel better, some of which we have no control over.
Right.
And there's going to be some days where we can do things that we're going to feel better. And there's going to be other days where we just have to ride through it. You've talked a little bit about what you do to ride through it. Any other words of wisdom on those days when, if you had your ideal words, you might not even want to get out of bed?
What's interesting for me is that I actually can't stay in bed anymore. I average maybe 4 to 5 hours of sleep every night, and it's a combination of various things. It's the pain. I'm on CPAP, so it's getting dried out by the CPAP that wakes me up all night. I'm getting old, so I go to the bathroom all the time. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on, right, that wakes me up. But I try to stay present to how I'm feeling at any particular moment. As I said, I use pain as a teacher as opposed to a punishment. I choose to persevere every single day. And then you also have to look a little bit at how you define prosperity. For me, prosperity, gratitude, it's having a purpose in life. It's my family and my friends. And that's what I focus on. And having all the money in the world is wonderful, but if you don't have a lot of those things that I just mentioned, what's the money good for anyway? So it's really I concentrate on those three things, and that tends to help me through.
And I think we've had the conversation before, the importance of having a why in your business. And I think that what you're talking about there really comes down to, why am I in business and why do I care about getting up and doing this?
Yeah. I know that my dad lived until he was 98. And we actually, the whole time we were growing up, we always believed that my mother was going to outlive my father. And she actually passed when she was 86. And my dad worked literally every single day until he was about 88, 89, something like that. And I realized that he was he was working with my brother in his business. So he was with family. So he was in an environment where it was tolerant to his age, but it was important to him because it's what kept him alive, I think, in many ways. So it's like with me, I don't expect to really ever stop working in some form. I'm sure I'm going to slow down dramatically, and I'm sure I'm going to become a problem if I'm working for somebody else at some point, maybe because of memory issues. But I know that as long as I'm working, I'll feel viable, and I'll do much better than I would do if I'm having to just sit in a chair all day long and moaning and woe is me. Yeah.
I know, Deryck, you have an extensive technology background. Can you talk to us a little bit about people who get easily overwhelmed with technology and
Yeah.
stress out about it? I know you've worked with people before that have not had that background and needed to accomplish some simple tasks. And what have you found works well in just walking people through that process?
Yeah, I've actually worked with a lot of people. In fact, I found that most people, it's a minority of people that are actually comfortable with tech. Most people are not. That seems to be the natural state of things. And one of the things that I did when I was younger is I was actually a pianist, and I went to university on a piano and wrestling scholarship. Weird combination, huh? But I used to teach kids, and one of the things that I always noticed was that you can take a kid and put them down at a piano and ask them to do something, and they just race right in there and they do it, and they don't hesitate because they're not afraid. They're not afraid of breaking anything. They're not afraid of how people are going to react. They're just so excited about doing it that they just forge ahead. Most adults, on the other hand, are very reticent to move forward. They're afraid they're going to break something. They're afraid that they're going to do something wrong and they're going to get judged because whatever. So one of the things that I try to do is I try to impress upon people that you don't need, let's take GoHighLevel, for example. If you're going in there and you're trying to design a funnel or a website in GoHighLevel, it's got a versioning capability and it has an undo and redo function. So no matter what you do, there's very little that you can do that's going to really F things up. The best way to learn is just to get in there and experiment and try things out and not worry about, am I going to totally screw this up? Because you can't. Again, you've got a versioning system which allows you to go back to a previous version, and you also have the ability to undo this or redo this. And so you're never really going to get yourself in a spot where you can't get out or somebody can't come in and fairly quickly unwind what you've done. So I think it's really focusing on, again, their mindset relative to technology. And I think one of the things that happens in particular with GoHighLevel is people come in and they just get immediately overwhelmed because there's so much there. So one of the things I typically do when I'm working with somebody with that kind of tech, whether it's GoHighLevel, Salesforce is a similar thing, is to focus in on what task it is that you're trying to do and eliminate everything else. Don't worry about anything else. Just focus on the one thing that you need to be able to do and accomplish that, and not be afraid to experiment or to try. And I have a client that's in her late 70s, and she's amazing. And when she first started, she was that way. She was very concerned about what she should do next. Can she do it? That kind of thing. And in time now, she's gotten to the point where she can actually go in and make changes, and she's not afraid to go in and actually try things. And I think that's the one thing you can try to help people understand and learn, is not to be afraid to just go and try.
I think that's great advice. You and I are both champions of high level, and I see far too often people getting overwhelmed because they try to learn everything.
Yeah.
And if you can sit down with somebody that can understand and walk you through what you're trying to accomplish, and then get some advice from them about, here's what you need to go and focus on at the moment, and just focus on this, as you said, and don't try to learn everything because you don't need to know everything.
No, you just need to
There's
know
parts of
whatever
the
task you're
system that
trying
you
to accomplish.
probably may never use depending on your business. And really finding that source that you can get your feet dipped into the pool and figure out what you need to do is super important.
Yeah, I think another thing that tends to get in people's ways is that a lot of times they'll be trying to do something and then something will happen that gets in their way, that blocks their forward momentum, and then they get frustrated by it. And so if you can work out a scenario either with a partner that can help answer the question for you, but work out a scenario where you can actually not allow yourself to get blocked at any particular moment. With my clients, I tend to allow them to text me at any time, call me at any time, etc., because I don't want them to get that blockage, right? Because I know as soon as they do, they're going to get frustrated and they're going to quit. So I try to eliminate that.
And I think that's a good point overall for our audience is it is important to develop those collaborative relationships with other people, bless you, that I know when I get stuck with something, whether it's a tech issue, I've got people now that I've developed over time that I can text or pick up the phone to and say, do you know how to do this? Or I've encountered something new. What's the best way to work through this?
Excuse me.
Bless you again.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. I know you also do a fair amount in the cybersecurity area, and it's an area that a lot of entrepreneurs, solopreneurs don't maybe pay as much attention to as they should. What are some very basic words of advice that you would relay to our audience?
Probably the biggest thing that runs people into trouble is that, for example, they'll get an email and it could even be from somebody they know, but it's uncharacteristic in terms of what they get. And it'll be something like invite them to open a graphic or a PDF file or whatever. And if that's not a behavior that's normal for that person, like for example, if you've got somebody that's a friend of yours and they've never sent you a PDF file before, and all of a sudden you're getting an email with them with a PDF saying, hey, please open. Don't open it. Contact that person first and say, hey, did you send me a PDF? Take a second to sit back and ask, is this normal behavior? If it isn't, then don't move forward, because that's one of the ways that cyber criminals, hackers, et cetera, use to basically violate the trust of your machine. Use a little common sense and use a little bit of caution when you're opening these things. I know that a lot of times now I've noticed where I get these either text messages or whatever that there's just something about it that doesn't quite look right. And if you go and actually drill in, for example, let's say you get an email, and let's say that email is supposedly coming from your bank, go look at the who sent it. And does the sending email address look like the correct email address for your bank? And is what's being sent, is that a normal behavior for your bank? Because a lot of times you're going to notice, hey, I've never gotten an email like this from my bank, or they've never asked for something like this before. If they've never done it before, don't assume that they're all of a sudden going to start doing it. Check it out first. So I think a lot of people, they get themselves into trouble because they don't use common sense in terms of what they're about to open or what they're about to do. Take your time, sit back, think about it a little bit. A lot of times I know when I look at emails, I just look at the email address, and when you see it's coming from a Gmail account, it might have unitedbank@gmail.com. United Bank doesn't use @gmail.com. So you just have to watch out for that kind of thing.
Are some other kind of best practices that you might recommend for entrepreneurs related to their technology stack?
Okay, what I try to do is I look at what are the tasks that I carry out on a daily basis, and I try to automate as much of that as I can. Now, obviously, your ability to do that's going to vary dramatically based on your skill set, but you can build that up over time. But what I look for is I look for tools and or methods that allow me to accomplish something faster, easier, etc. For example, I use Descript to do video editing. One of the reasons is not only is it inexpensive, like free, because the version I use is free. I don't use the paid version. And with one push of a button, it takes out all the larger gaps that are typically in somebody's phraseology. With a touch of a button, it will remove all of the extra words that people into the uhs and ohs and sometimes double words and so on. It'll strip all that out automatically. That's a huge time saver. So I look for those things in either software that I use or the applications I use. Can it do anything like that that's going to save me time and save me effort? The thing you have to keep in mind is that all these things are just tools. That's all they are. I liken to using a 10-key calculator. That's the other advice I would give. If a 10-key calculator, if you even know what that is anymore, but if a 10-key calculator does the job for you, why pay money to get something that's so much more than a 10-key calculator? If you don't use it, why spend the money? So I try to advise my clients to look at it, look at what you're trying to do, and try to match the tool that's going to be the best at what it is that you're trying to do. And also taking in cost and time and all those kinds of factors. And what you'll typically find is you're going to come down to a subset of tools that you will use over and over again, and you'll get comfortable with it, and you'll just find that it gets you through your day a lot faster and a lot easier. Don't overcomplicate it, is what I'm saying, and don't overthink it.
Sometimes you have to look for new things that are coming out on the market, and
Sure.
other times there are things that you use for years and years because they're steady, they do their job, and you don't need different ones.
Yeah. And I think one place where people tend to get caught is the development of a software application is not a trivial thing. One, it takes a lot of time, takes a lot of money, typically. And it requires a lot of ongoing effort in terms of fixing bugs and maintenance and so on and so forth. So it's not a trivial thing for somebody to get into. And when you're looking at software, you want to be looking at all aspects of it. In other words, is this a company that's going to be around to support the software? How are they at support? When you pick up a phone, is there somebody that actually answers your call, or you send an email? Does it take 48 hours to get a response, or do they respond within 24, or do they respond right away? I know one of the things that sold me on GoHighLevel is I remember early on, I had one weekend I was working with somebody and we ran into a problem. And I literally emailed one of the founders of GoHighLevel, and it was on a Sunday, and within an hour I had a response. And that immediately told me, okay, this is a company I can work with, because they take their customer base that seriously, that they're willing to put that kind of time in. And not a lot of companies will do that. I know for myself, when I run my business, it's all about service, because that's one of the ways that I differentiate myself from anybody else in the market. My clients know they can reach me in the evenings. They know they can get me on the weekends. They know they can get me pretty much whenever they need, within certain constraints. They know that if I'm working with somebody else, I might shoot them a text saying I'll get right back to you or something like that. But they know I respond. And there's a lot of companies, and I've suffered from it as well. There's products that I've bought over the years that within a year, the company was gone and it was money wasted. And so you want to avoid that as much as you possibly can. And the only way you can do that is by doing your homework, finding out who the developers are. Have they developed other products? What's the general opinion in the marketplace about their products or about them? And that stuff you can generally find out. All you got to do is just a little bit of homework on your browser and you can find it out.
And I think that's a really good point, because many entrepreneurs early on in their experience get caught up in what we refer to as shiny object syndrome.
Yeah.
And you can invest an awful lot of money into picking up what you think is going to be the greatest new resource to help you in your business, only, as you say, to turn out that it's no longer in business, or it doesn't do what it says it's going to do just a few months later.
And as I try to tell people I work with, what do you want to be? Do you want to be a buyer, or do you want to be a seller? I know for myself, I prefer to be a seller, because everybody's got finite resources when it comes to being a buyer. Yours may be $1 million, yours may be $100,000, yours may be $10. It doesn't really matter, but there's a limit, right? And you don't want to get yourself in a position where you're just ad hoc buying just for the sake of buying. You want to, anytime you purchase anything, you're purchasing it for a reason. It's to accomplish a specific goal. And you don't, what good is it for me to have 10 different graphic editors unless each one does something unique that the other doesn't do? Then that might, and I emphasize might, justify it. But in most cases, you get a single graphic editor or maybe two, and they will do pretty much everything you need to do. You don't need to keep buying graphic editors. Now, What typically drives me to purchase is where either for a client or for myself, I have specific tasks that I need to accomplish, and I don't have the tool to accomplish what it is that I need. And that's when I will shop and actually go look for a solution. And in most cases, I'm doing it in such a way that I know that I can ultimately monetize whatever it is that I'm buying. In other words, I can turn it around and turn it into a for-profit venture as opposed to something that's just a pure expense.
I guess I would add to that one of the traps we sometimes fall into is we buy something in expectation that I think I'm going to do this, or I think I'm going to use this. And you have plans to, but you're not at the stage in your business yet that you're ready to use it. And so it's money spent that you may or may not ever get to using.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of us, our eyes are bigger than our stomachs, so to speak. So we tend to credit ourselves with the ability to do things that we really can't do. And so we tend to go a little bit hog wild when it comes down to buying these things. And the thing is any product you buy, you've got to take the time to learn. You've got to take the time to really determine whether or not it is going to meet the objectives under which you bought it for in the first place. And all that takes time. And when you're working with clients every single day, you don't necessarily have that time. Making a purchase isn't something it's a luxury, it's a necessity. But you have to have the time to be able to assimilate it into your business. And if you don't have that time, then you're wasting your money, because what you're going to do is you're going to buy it and it's going to sit on a shelf and you're never going to get to it. And it's just going to be money wasted.
Let's talk a minute about scaling your business, because entrepreneurs who have chronic illnesses or health challenges wonder how they can go about scaling their business based on their capacity for doing work. Can you talk about any strategies that you would recommend looking at people's strategies who can't just like work harder to grow their business?
Yeah, I think this is generally true for anybody, whether you've got a disability or have some problem of some sort. Anyway, when it comes to growing a business, I know, for example, I'm at a point right now where I'm looking at seriously scaling, bringing in investment capital, actually bringing on employees, the whole bit. And every business goes through plateaus. So there's kind of a sequence that you go through as you're growing your business. There are kind of points of transition where things change. And sometimes some of it's driven by cash flow, some of it's driven by that point when you start bringing in your first employees, that some of it's driven by the clients that you have, et cetera. And it's one of the first things I think for most people that's really critical is trying to get yourself in a position as quickly as you can to where you're actually working on your business, not in your business. And that's a really difficult thing to do for a lot of people. And why? Because number one, you've got to have, it can't just be you, right? You've got to have a team, whether it's contractors, whether it's employees, whatever, but you got to have a team in place. And you've got to be willing to deal with managing that. It's about creating processes for every aspect of your business. Because if you're going to bring somebody on board, for example, it's not good enough to just get to a point and say, okay, it's time to hire somebody and bring them on, and then not have any definition as to what you want them to do, or a set of work instructions in terms of how they're supposed to do what it is that you want them to do. So there's a process that you have to go through in terms of building that up, because I think I know for me, the faster I can bring contractors and employees on, the more I can get off of my shoulders onto somebody else's shoulders and keep things moving forward. If you're a solopreneur, you do everything, which means you not only work during the day, but often you work at night too, because you got to do the books, you do everything, right? So I think for a lot of people that have disabilities, the faster you can get yourself in a position where you can have at least some contractors in place. Usually for a lot of people, one of the first things to solve is sales, right? Because sales drives revenue, and that in turn gives you the ability to add people to your staff, whether contractors or employees. So when I had, for example, my last business, I turned it competitive and I brought on commission-only salespeople. And I made it so that the commission was without any top end, meaning that when they came in to sell, I had the products for them to sell. I had the lists, if you will, for them to sell to. And there was no limit to how much they could make. In fact, I had some salespeople that actually made more money than I did as the owner of the business. But for me, that was a good thing, because if they're making money, that means I'm making money, which is what I wanted, right? And the faster I can build up the revenue, the faster I can begin to invest and do other things and begin to really build the business out. So those are some of the things that you really need to be thinking about as you're looking to grow your business. I think the other problem is that most people don't really properly plan their business. They don't think through, okay, what are the stages that I need to go through with this business? How do I need to grow it? What do I need to do at each of the different phases of the business? What are my goals? All those kinds of things. People don't do that in enough detail, and they just wing it. And you don't succeed by winging it. You really have to plan it out. It's like in sales. I work a lot with Eric Lofholm. In fact, I know you know him because you're the one that introduced me to him. But Eric has been in sales for a long time. He's a proponent of scripting, and I completely 100% agree. You don't want to go into a sales scenario where you haven't scripted out what it is you're going to say to the prospect, because then you're basically just winging it, and you're never going to be able to guide the interaction with that client in the way that you need it to go. Instead, you're going to be reactive instead of proactive.
And I think, Deryck, we have both experienced it. There's things that you need to do before you can just outsource sales or any other tasks that would be easier to get off of your plate. Mm-hmm. There's prep work that's got to be done, because you have to fully understand that component of your business to be able to train and prepare people to take it on for you.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about, having the processes in place, having them well-defined. I worked in the corporate world for about 12 years, and we were an ISO-rated company. We were a CMM-rated company because we were doing software development, and we had processes in place for literally everything. And the entire team was trained on every one of those processes and judged against them. And even as a small business person, you need to document what your processes are and turn things into systems. How do you onboard somebody? Turn that into a system so that there's a clear, repeatable process of what you do when you onboard somebody. What kind of training do you provide them? What kind of questions do you ask them? All those things, that all needs to be documented. Then when you go to bring somebody on, a new employee, a new contractor, you can actually point them, okay, here's the process when we onboard somebody. This is the steps that you're going to follow. This is what you're going to do. It just makes the whole thing work so much smoother and so much easier when you have that in place. If you don't have it in place, then your chances of success are dramatically diminished.
One other question I had for you was, you've worked with some really big names in technology and marketing. For entrepreneurs who may not be able to kind of network in more traditional ways due to their health constraints, what alternative strategies would you recommend that would help them connect with other people to build some of those relationships?
I'll give you an example of something I'm doing right now. I've actually forged a partnership with, we're still in the process, I should say. What he's done, he's a former venture capital guy from the DC market. He's moved to Utah, but what he ended up doing is he ended up developing a very comprehensive training program for AI. Now, it's not the way most people think. It's not, okay, how do I use ChatGPT or how do I use Copilot or anything like that? It's more about, okay, if I'm an organization, what do I need to be thinking about if I'm going to implement AI in my organization? What's important to consider when I'm thinking about doing some type of AI automation, or if I'm going to build an AI agent, or if I'm going to integrate with one of my legacy systems? What are the processes that need to be in place, and so on? And so what he's done is he's developed this entire, what he calls ambassador program, and he introduces it to anybody at any level within an organization. And the brilliance of it is what it in effect does is it turns the people that goes through his program into his champions within that organization, because they then go on to promote because he's the basis from which they've learned. So they essentially become his champions. So what we're doing is I've actually put 2 agreements in place that gives me roughly 1,600 development resources in AI. And so by combining these 2 things, we now have an ambassador program we can take into the mid to enterprise markets, promote that to the entire staff within that organization, thereby turning them into potential champions for us. And then we then have the resources behind us to be able to actually implement those projects. And those are white label relationships. So they come in as me as opposed to their organization. Anything you do, whether you're doing it at the enterprise level, mid-market, or if you're doing it with mom and pop shops, you need to think about what's your goal? What is it you're trying to accomplish? If I'm selling to, let's say, for example, if I'm selling to mom and pop offices, what's important to them? And how can I go about delivering the solution, the benefit that's going to solve whatever problem it is that they have? And isolate and really focus in on a particular problem. Don't try to solve every problem. If you look at my website, I got a gazillion different solutions on there, okay? Not how I would recommend for most people to do it. But what I don't do is I don't try to sell all those. They're there, but I don't try to sell all of them. For anything that I sell, it depends on who it is that I'm selling to and what is the one problem that they have that something I have may solve that problem for them. And that's pretty much the way I focus in on it. So I'm only selling one thing at a time, and I'm really focused in on what the problem is for that specific client. Now, if you want to expand that for somebody that's I'll say new, keep it focused to start with just one thing. Find some solution that you can be a master of solving and really just focus in on that one thing, because the name of the game is getting through the door, because most sales will come from your existing clients. So if you can get through the door, you're going to sell a lot more over time. But you got to get through the door. To get through the door, you need to find out what is that one problem that client or that group of clients, what is the one problem that they all have, that whatever it is that you have will solve for them, and that you can deliver in a unique way that differentiates you from everybody else in the market.
I guess I would add, you do your research, you try to understand based on what your business is founded on and your mission services you sell and such, who's going to be the people that you might want to approach as potential clients. But I think it's really important, and you've alluded to this also, to go in with curiosity, trying to understand what the problem is, as opposed to, I have this wonderful thing I want to sell you.
Yeah, I'm actually working on something that's really cool, I think. And it got started, I was on an event where I was one of the speakers. It was dealing with AI. And there was another gentleman that was also speaking, and he had developed a really elegant prompt for defining your avatar. And so what's happened is I ended up meeting somebody that in their particular situation, what they had done is they had developed something similar, but in their case, what they were really focused in on was, if you were to look at all your clients over time, what were the characteristics of the top 5 best clients that you have? And so imagine doing something that will identify your ideal avatar, but mixing in with that, where it's focused on the top 5 clients that you actually have closed, you actually do business with, and what characteristics are unique about that group. Because that's different than just getting a kind of a generic definition of, oh, here's my avatar. So what I'm doing is I'm actually he actually built a manual process for going through he had templates and spreadsheets and a bunch of stuff you go through and you fill out and you answer about your top 5 clients and so on. And so I've taken that and I'm producing a system that will use ChatGPT to generate your ideal avatar definition, but focused around your top 5 clients. And I think the results are going to be unique, and they're going to be different than this generic one that I have from that other person. But that's really what you want to try to focus in on is, what's your comfort zone? What are you good at? What are you good at solving? What's different about the way you solve it that might be unique, that gives you a unique value proposition, and then really focusing in on what's going to be the benefit to those customers by using your solution. And if you sell the benefit and you focus on their problem, you're going to have a much higher level of success than otherwise, I believe.
Yeah, I think that's so true. We know from our experience in terms of working together with companies, one of the things that we see so often is that people don't have their ideal avatar or ideal client really honed in. They have a vague idea, but they don't have it honed in. And I think what you're talking about with AI, some things that I have done with it that we may demo later on in the summit, really shows the importance of that, particularly working with AI. You've got to get to the level of specificity so that it can perform well for you.
Right.
I have just one last question for you. You're off screen. There we go.
There we go.
One last question for you. Any other tips that you'd like to give the audience that you think might be helpful as they are doing the balance between managing their health issues and challenges that you may have encountered along those paths throughout your entrepreneurial career?
Yeah, I think, I can certainly speak for me and whether this applies to you or not, but you really need to put a priority on your health, because once that slips, it's really hard to get back. And focus on making sure that you're eating, that you're getting the sleep you need, that you're drinking water pretty regularly, all kind of the common sense stuff that most of you do, but you don't do. Make sure you do it, because it's going to have a huge impact on your overall energy level. And as fast as you lose energy, you're going to lose the ability to really forge and push ahead. So really focus on your health. Take the time for it. I remember years ago, and it wasn't so much centered around the health at that point, but the more tired you get, the less productive you are. So putting in more and more hours doesn't necessarily make you more productive. If anything, it makes you less productive. So really focus on those things that's going to give you the energy and the space that you need to really be productive when you do work. So give yourself that room to be able to breathe in between.
Great. Thank you so much, Deryck. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah, it was great. It was good talking to you again. And I wish you all the success with the summit.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Take care.
Okay. Bye.